I'm not sure whether I can start or not. If I start, does anybody know how to start the equipment? And my answer to that is no. And I'm kind of dyslexic, and all I can see is no. No, now that they've gone digital, I just think it's who knows? Record.
Yeah, but you think that's all it is? That's why we're trying to.
No one knows for sure, huh? Yeah. He's kind of going back and forth between 3 or 4 different places. Everybody got a piece of paper? I mean, one of the ones that I printed. Good. Okay, let me introduce myself. I'm Arden Hopkin. I'm a professor of singing. I teach at Brigham Young University. That's not so very far away, a rival school to the Air Force Academy. So this is actually the first time that I've been to Colorado Springs, and I'm impressed. The desert on the east face of the mountain looks almost the same as the desert on the west face of the mountain. I feel right at home. At any rate, over the course of the last number of years, with the help of the Joneses, I've been helping to put together a progressive vocal seminar to give callers like yourselves the opportunity to look at various elements of your singing voice and make improvements on it if you so desire. In order to do that, you need accurate information, and you need simple ways that you can get to practice those things on your own. But the reality is that the conversation that we have here this morning will only be useful to you if the things that I show you how to do, you do. If you do them again and again, at first you'll feel terribly self-conscious about it because anything that you do differently will make you feel self-conscious. As a matter of fact, the process of changing means that you take that part of yourself which used to be subconscious, you just do it naturally, and you bring it up to the level of conscious observation so that you can choose to change your pattern from what it used to be to something that's new. Along the way, I've been participant in some neuro studies where information gets stored in your brain, and there's a routing center back at the back of your skull that automatically shunts information to action centers in your body without any conscious thought. And it does that, your brain does that to save the effort of thinking. As all of you know, there's nothing harder in the world than thinking. It's more exhausting than any kind of thing that you do, and your brain likes to save energy, and so it develops neural pathways, and those things we call habits. When you want to change a habit, the thing that you have to do is to become aware of the neural pathways, meaning you have to observe what happens and reroute the impulses of your brain away from the old habit and toward the new behavior. And over an extended period of time, the new behavior will become second nature to you and gradually replace that habit. At least that's what the neuroscientists say. That isn't what my life experience says. My life experience says that no matter how many times, how many years I've been practicing the new thing, if I get sloppy or lazy, or if I'm tired, or if I get out of shape, those old habits are sitting there waiting to reassert themselves right off the bat. So what that means is that you're a little bit like an alcoholic, that you may think that you're cured of your old habits, but the reality is that it's just been so many days of new behaviors that have been set upon you.
He said it should be running.
Yeah, John said so. The system seems a little loud to me, does it, John? Yeah. Well, I can always hold it a little farther away. Well, anyway, that's going to be the process that we're going to do, and it's not going to be any more painful than the very first thing that we're going to do. Not found on your piece of paper is some new information about how to align your posture and why it's important. And you've been sitting and standing the way that you do that, the way you normally do it, for a very, very long time. And as soon as you try to adjust that, your body is going to complain. And the more determined you are about making the change, the more your body will complain at you. And so just get ready for a long, protracted argument with yourself about posture. Would you all stand up and come up around in a semicircle? The first thing that's on the piece of paper are called the 3 stretches. I've given them that name. Nobody else would have the guts to give them that name. But it's just a simple way of describing the kinds of things that you ought to do before you start to sing. Any athlete that's going to go out and perform will always stretch before he or she goes out to do that. And so the first thing that you want to do is to align your posture. The right posture is that your ears, the whole of your ears, goes over your shoulders. The shoulders go right over the hip points, and the hip points go over the knees go over the ankle. And you'd say, well, that's all easy to say. How do I know? And so what I'd like to have you do is to close your eyes while I pick your pocket. Close your eyes and rock forward on the balls of your feet until you're about to tip over, and then roll back on your heels until you're about to tip over, and roll back and forth like a pendulum, always looking for that place where your body will find gravitational center. You'll tell what it is because it won't require you to hold yourself in any kind of strange place. You'll just kind of hit center, and your body will be aligned gravitationally. In that position, you're ready to try to align your body. Now close your eyes. You all know where your ears are, although your wives would swear that you don't. Now you got your ears. You all know where your shoulders are, the shoulder points are. See if you can put your ears right over your shoulders. Yeah, you're all making an effort to do so. Now, you know where your shoulders are and you know where your hip points are, where the sockets of your hips are. Just put those right on top of each other if you can. Now you all know where your knees are, those ones that have been replaced the last year or so. Okay, those line up. Okay, you're in pretty good shape. Now I'm just going to go around and look. There is a common thread that runs through this thing, and that is that almost to a person, I can't quite get around where everybody is, but almost to a person, not quite all to a person, we all carry our heads forward on our bodies in front of our shoulders. And as the result of that, the muscles of your shoulders and your neck have to work harder than they normally would do to hold this melon off center. And by doing that, the muscles of the shoulders and the muscles of the neck get drawn, they become accustomed to being tight, and as a result, there's tension all through the back of the neck constantly. It's a state of being for almost everybody. And so, if you can get your head to line up right, you're going to take some pressure off your shoulders. And those muscles in your neck, when they relax, it'll be easier for you to sing because those muscles in the back of the neck affect the muscles in the front of the neck where the larynx is located, and it frees the whole mechanism to sing more freely. So just trying to imagine this isn't the right answer. The truth is that you have a bunch of ovals in your body, circles. You have to use your imagination here, but then, yeah, Dan just patted his tummy. That's no oval. It's more like a melon. That's what he said. I just repeat. Okay, so the first oval is actually your pelvis. And if you can imagine a skeletal structure, the pelvis forms an oval. The next oval in your body is the bottom of your rib cage. Everybody understands how the rib cage works. There's an oval there. Try to put the oval of your hips right beneath the oval of the bottom of your rib cage. And you'll discover that in so doing, you have to kind of rotate your hips just a little bit. You have to elongate your spine a little bit. It gets rid of a slight sway back, and you line up that part of your body about right. Now, as I'm looking at you, I'm thinking that that's a pretty good result. The next one is there's an oval right at the top of your rib cage. Put the oval on the top of the rib cage, right over the oval that's at the bottom of the rib cage. You have to use your imagination to line that up. This will all have a really good reason here in just a second. You'll see it in just a moment. The occipital bone is the bone that's at the base of your skull, and it's another oval. Can you set that occipital bone right on top of, gravitationally, right on top of the top oval of your rib cage? Now, let's just go around person by person. Chuck, this oval right here and this oval, I'm going to have to hold this, if you don't mind me touching you a little bit. Okay, that oval and that oval. This oval's in front of that oval. Can you tell that?
Which one's in front?
The one of your ribs is in front. You just fixed it. You just fixed it. But Chuck had been so accustomed to that other kind of behavior that it seemed natural to you, didn't it? This doesn't feel natural at all. That's not bad, huh? Okay, yeah, it actually will. Then you take this oval, and this oval is behind this oval. You have to lean just a little bit forward. That's unusual, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now this head, yeah, now let me just tinker, because you're trying to shorten it. I'm just going to try to let go of the muscles in the back of your neck if you can. Let me rotate your head forward and rotate it back and loosen that up. The distance between this point on the back of your shoulders and this in the base of your head, can you stretch that long? Yeah, stretch it long. You'll find yourself looking down at your shoulders, won't you? Mm-hmm. Look down at the ground. Stretch that long. Okay, now that's where the relationship should be. Now I'm going to get Chuck to push back against my hand without shortening his neck muscles while doing that. And that's hard, isn't it? I'm going to get you to do that with me so I can show you how the muscles should work. Put your hand on the back of my head. There's this point right here, and there's that point right there that I'm trying to stay far apart from. You see it? Now, this is the way that you're trying to level your head. See how that shortens the neck?
Yeah. Okay.
And now all of a sudden I changed my posture, didn't I?
Yes.
And you'll start using muscles down here in your back that you're not used to.
So I want to make the neck long.
Don't keep your neck long.
All right.
Keep these 2 points as far apart as you can get them. Farther apart. Okay, now in that position, move my hand backward. It's hard, isn't it? Because you want to use those muscles right in there. That's what I'm talking about. This kind of change is really hard to do. As I'm looking down the way, that looks pretty good. Good. I get it. There's back here, if I can just tug a little bit. Now, let me promise you something. If you go into this posture and try to hold it for the rest of the day, you won't be able to get out of bed tomorrow. Because the muscles, when you change your posture, change anything about yourselves, when you change your posture, there are certain muscles that have been used to doing more work, and they'll want to keep doing it. And there are other muscles that are not as strongly adept, and they'll tire quickly. And you keep holding them there, and they'll get sore, and they'll let you know about it tomorrow. So the idea is that you don't do this all at once. You just do it a little bit at a time. You can't even do it for the whole of a dance, to tell you the truth. You can hold this for about 20 minutes, maybe 25 at a time, and over the course of several months, you just keep going back to that posture. And pretty soon those muscles adjust, and then you're free to make the change. I did that to myself a couple of years ago when I learned that principle. This is a principle of a body alignment that doesn't really come from singing. It comes from athletics and from dancing and from other places where people have to align their body. It's called the Alexander technique, and it's used in a lot of different kind of physical activity disciplines. Anyway, I'd been working on it for about 4 or 5 months, and then came the long Christmas holiday at the university, and I thought, here's my big chance. I'm going to just adopt this new posture when I don't have to think anything else except getting out of bed in the morning and finding the new posture. And I got into that new posture, and for about 2 weeks I felt really good, and then for the next month I felt like I had flu. My body was so sore, but I didn't have any fever, and I didn't have any cough or anything, but I had body aches like I couldn't believe. And it was because my body was still adjusting to those changes that I'd made. So as you get it, you've got the circle here and the circle here. Now this circle or this oval is in front of that oval. Can you tell that? Sitting right on top. So try to there you go. That was just a very subtle adjustment, but it changed the way that your lower back worked it slightly, didn't it? Stretched it just a little bit. Now this is going to be a very interesting thing. I'm going to just hit you right in the sternum. And I want you to, I'm pushing on you, and not to push you over, but until your sternum is facing straight to the floor. This is another Chuck. He's got his chest thrown open in what used to be called the noble or the singer's posture. But in the process of doing that, what you do is you end up swaying your back. And there you go. You did it. You just fixed it. It was a very subtle adjustment, wasn't it? Good. That looks pretty good, except that your head kind of likes to float forward. Chuck, you want to try to help this guy? No, I'm kidding. It's the same challenge. And if you've been in that posture for a very long time, what I'm asking, I've watched yours is in pretty good shape, and I'm not going to touch you. So, no.
Oh, please.
No. No, let's just double check here. You got the circle of your pelvis, what a circle it is, and the circle of your ribs. Are those lined up on top?
I think they are.
I don't. Okay. I voted there. Thank you.
Okay.
And then this one lines up pretty good, except that this one's wanting to be behind this one, meaning that her shoulders are thrown back. Why would a woman do a thing like that, I wonder?
She likes to strut.
Yeah. Counteract the ravages of time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Good. All right. Now, as I put you in this position, do you not feel a little bit stretched in an unusual way? Here's the reason why, and that becomes to the second stretch. And that is that when you breathe, just breathe in through your nostrils. When you're in that kind of a posture, where does your breath go? Anybody? They're pointing all over the place. Let me tell you where it should go. It should go straight down inside your body. You should take that breath, stretch inside yourselves until you can feel your rib cage stretch. There are little ligaments right at the bottom of your ribs. That's where your diaphragm's attached. And I want you to take a breath until you can feel that stretch. Will you do that? Now, if you get this posture lined up right, you'll feel a stretch in the side of the ribs. You'll feel an expansion here in the front of yourselves. But you'll also feel a stretch in the ribs at the back. Your breath will just go straight down underneath you as if you were sitting on a big column of air. Now go back to your normal traditional postures. Do that same thing. Take your breath. And for most of you, all you get is it moves straight out in front of you. And when it moves straight out in front of you, it's no longer available to you in the same easy facility that it was when it stays right underneath you. So if you're really anxious to have more breath control, have more breath to use, make your phrasing go longer, these are the tools that are going to be necessary for you to get better access to your breath. So the first stretch is a stretch along your spine. I call it a cross stretch. All the way from the top of the base of your skull down to your tailbone, stretch it as long as you can. That'll mean that for many of you, you'll get rid of a slight sway back, the pelvis will rotate ever so slightly, and your spine will be elongated. The other stretch is right across your shoulder blades, okay, laterally. And instead of throwing your shoulders back like you used to be in the military, you just roll your shoulders, let your shoulders roll as comfortably forward as you can. Now, all of a sudden, you say, well, I'm standing round-shouldered, and my mommy told me I shouldn't ever do that. But the reality is the way I'm standing right now is not round-shouldered. But it's not this. When you feel the muscles between your scapula, your shoulder blades drawn tight, you can't hold good posture. And as soon as you do those things, your breath's going to go out in front of you. And as soon as it's out in front of you, you don't have the same access to it. So first stretch, postural. Go back to it. Oval, over oval, over oval, over oval. The second one, that stretches your back. Then stretch your shoulders. Let them lay long and drawn flat across the back of you. That's stretch number one. Stretch number two. Form your lips as if you had a little martini straw. And inhale. You'll feel that stretch going on at the bottom of your ribs. If you've got that stretch, and when you're full, just suspend it there. When you've got that position, just notice what it feels like. It's stretched all the way around your body. Let it exhale. We're going to do it again. Let it settle. Feel it down underneath you, and let it go. That's the second stretch. It just reminds your body where it's supposed to be. The third stretch has to do with your voice. And I'd like to have you form that little martini straw opening again. And this time I'd like to have you make sound while you're blowing out, as if you were making the letter W. Okay, now take that suspended breath and start undulating your voice. I'll demonstrate it once and then I'll get you to do it. In that stretched place, I want you to go and feel the connection that goes on between that suspended place and the ease of your throat. Would you do that? It makes pretty good sense in the low range. It's a pretty easy thing to do. But interestingly, most people, when they go into the middle of their voice or slightly above the middle of their voice, their breath patterns change. But it shouldn't. The pattern should remain the same. So, I'll demonstrate and then I'll get you to do it. And it has that same sort of grounded feeling in the stretch. Would you do that for me? First, the low position. Then in the upper middle part of your voice. Now raise your hand if your body... No, I mean, wait until I've asked the question. Raise your hand if you felt your body wanting to change the pattern of your breathing and to compress like an accordion or like a bellows to drive the voice into the higher place. Raise your hand if you experienced that. If you didn't, then you're on the right track. If you felt that your body squeezed in to get those notes to go higher, you're going to pay a price for it when you get to the top of your voice. You want to just learn to keep in that stretched, suspended place all the way through your breathing. In just a minute, I'm going to show you a means whereby you can do that. Having done the low part of your voice and the middle part of your voice, I'm now going to ask you to do that same thing in the higher part of your voice. I'll demonstrate. But from that suspended place. Try it. Here's the low part. The middle part. Stay in that stretch place. Now comes the high part. Now, let me ask you, did you feel a compression going on here when you tried to go to the high notes? Raise your hand if you felt that squeeze tight. One, a little half admission, another firm admission, and a third admission, and a few other people that are saying, I'm not telling. Because the normal pattern is that it does do that. For almost everybody, we have a pattern of easy airflow in the low part of our voice, and the air gets highly compressed when we go to the high notes. And it gets so compressed that our throat gets tight, and we can't sing those high notes because it wears us out. I see some of you sort of nodding your head, even though you don't want to admit it. And this is all based on this very simple thing of getting your breath to flow. The next thing that I want to do is to talk to you a little bit about how you can teach this to yourselves. This little drill that we just did, finding the postural alignment, you saw I just made that adjustment. Taking that stretching breath, gliding, without changing the compression. Let's do that together. These are all things you can do. So take that stretched breath and start. Let's do it one more time. Okay, now you're soaring all over the place, and that's just what you should do. I'm going to come over here. Chuck, I want you to do the same thing. Chuck doesn't jump as high. He stays in that low range. So So here you go. It's your start. Move up. Higher. Now, right now, Chuck's reverting to that pattern where he's wanting to compress his breath. You'll feel it right along in here. It'll start to stiffen a little bit, and that sense of stretch will give way. So your awareness of that is going to help you a long way. So here you go, Chuck. Without changing that compression level, make your pitch glide up. Chuck's actually going through specific pitches. I'm going to ask you to just glide, and I'll demonstrate it. Just like that. And there was a point at which it began to be uncomfortable. It didn't feel like it could go any higher unless you pushed on it. Did you sense that?
Yeah.
That's an important thing to acknowledge. If any of the rest of you have that tendency, you need to find that place where your body just wants to change its pattern from being passive to being an aggressive thing. And instead of becoming aggressive, you just want to stretch. Here you go.
Oh, so.
Stretch. That's right. Now, he went past that place that he stopped before, and that you want to just keep coaxing that boundary to go higher. Why? Because when you learn how to do that, when you get comfortable doing that, you gain access to any call that's written. I've sort of done a study of the number of calls that exist. They keep expanding at such a rate that I can't keep up with them. But the ones that I know about rarely go more than about an octave and a half. And if you get some hot shot, they'll sometimes go up to 2 octaves. But all of you have in your body's facility a 3-octave range, where the last half octave on the bottom, you don't want to let anybody see, and the last half on the 3rd octave, you don't want to let anybody see because it's not safe. But that still gives you that middle ground. But if you're going to do these stretches and go all the way to the bottom and all the way to the top, there'll be sounds that you don't want anybody to hear, even your wife or your husband. But they're still there, and you want to stretch them out because the boundaries, the frontiers, will continue to expand both on the top and on the bottom as you do this thing. Okay, now, how do you figure out how to get this connection between your voice and your body? I've just been reading an interesting book. I'm going to recommend it to you because even though it's fairly scientific, it's written very simply. The book is called The Performing Voice, The Performer's Voice. And I'll have it here, and you can come up and look at it and get it comes from Norton Press. It's mostly marketed through universities in music departments. But the writer writes in very simple terms. And what makes her book interesting is that within the body of the text, she'll have some very detailed information, but she'll have it identified as detailed information. And she'll say to you, if you don't want the details, skip on to the next section. If you're interested in the names of the muscles and their connections and what they do, here it is for you. So the first section has to do with the physiology, the way the body works, kind of what we've been working on here. And it goes through 6 different chapters: posture, body posture, how to make a sound, how to enhance the resonance of the sound, the articulators of the tongue and the jaw and the lips. And then it goes into a second section, which has more to do with the attitudes of performing. And then the third segment has to do with the presentation of the performer. But the basic physiology is very, very simply and very straightforward put forward in this book, if you're interested in it. And I'll have it here for you to refer to. But this exercise that I'm going to show you comes from this book by Mary Beth Bunch Dane. And she, using her hands, I'd like to have you do this with me before I use my hands. And I want you to just inhale through your nostrils. And just watch the cycle of your breath. And you'll notice that it fills up. For a split second it suspends, and then it goes ahead and it exhales. Just watch the pattern of your breathing. And when it hits empty, it doesn't stay there very long, and the cycle of breathing begins over again. It's just a very natural cycle. But where I want you to place your attention is on the top of the circle and the bottom of the circle. If this is the inhalation cycle, there's a point where it's full, and then the exhalation cycle starts. And the circle of the hand goes up to about the top of the sternum and to the bottom of the pubic bone, so that the circle that you're playing is inside yourself. And the pattern is this: inhale, your hand goes away from your body and up. Exhale, your hand goes towards your body and downward. And in her book, she makes the explanation as to why. And I just want you to follow your own rhythm and actually close your eyes so that you're not enticed to follow a rhythm that anybody else follows. And just watch the cycle of your breathing. And your hand, while you're inhaling, your hand is going up and away, and it stops at the top of your chest. And when it goes down, when you start to exhale, your hand goes downward towards your pubic bone. And your arm starts to inscribe an ellipse. Okay, now just get used to that pattern so that you understand the process of your body. And the important thing is that your hand moves at a regular pace and that your hand never stops. Your hand becomes a kind of an indicator of what's going on in your brain. And often with singers, the cycle of the breath will get interrupted because it's being overridden by some other command. But that cycle just needs to happen. It won't happen in this regular pattern. The exhalation cycle will be much longer, and the inhalation cycle will be quicker in singing, but that pattern still works. Now do that to yourself again. We're going to inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, and the next time we hit the top of the inhale, I want you to form an M. And let it go. And then, and all during the exhale cycle, when you're out of breath, then inhale and stop humming. Now say as you get to the top of the cycle, I love to sing, I love to sing, I love to sing, until you're out of breath. Until you're out of breath. And then you inhale, I love to sing, I love to sing, I love to sing, I love to sing. Now let me tell you why this is important. It's like Sold America and you get to the end. What happens is that you need to start identifying that change point from when you're inhaling to when it's time to exhale. Because right at that point, you're in the fullest part of your breath, and it's the easiest to get your voice started. You don't have to push it. You don't have to do anything. I'll demonstrate. But if I go there or there, and my hand gives that downward thrust to get the air started, then there's an imbalance. There's a constriction as one body system starts to fight against the other body system. Now, if I were to sing, my bonnie lies over the ocean, my bonnie lies over the sea, my bonnie lies over the ocean, oh, bring back my bonnie to me. See how easy that happens? All I'm doing is just following the natural rhythm of my breathing. And you'll notice that my hand slowed down as I was going down, as I was exhaling, because I'm making my breath go longer. And then it moved quickly to fill up, but not a big rush and not a real slow thing. Will you join with me in singing that thing? Here's the cycle. You're inhaling away from your body. Go. My bonnie lies over the ocean. My bonnie lies over the sea. My bonnie lies over the ocean. Oh, bring back my bonnie to me. This becomes a self-teaching tool. I noticed a number of you, although I didn't get to look at all of you, I noticed a number of you haven't found the coordination between what your hand does and what your breath does. And so there's a disconnect there. And so I'll see you sing, and the minute you go to sing, your hand stops dead in its track because your mind has gone somewhere else. Well, guess what? Your breath has also stopped dead in its track as well. So this sequence is really important. The process of just getting a natural, easy flowing breath is really essential. How are we doing on time? Not very. We got to go until. Where? Okay, I'm right on track then, good. They gave me this clock because I think they thought I wouldn't get it done right, but they didn't ask me if I knew how to read a clock, so.
It's not digital.
The other principle that I've talked about in other seminars is the Bernoulli principle. It's a law of aerodynamics that says that when air is in motion, it creates low pressure. When it creates low pressure, it creates a semi-vacuum, and objects in the vicinity get drawn into that vacuum. That's what gives our weather systems. It's what made the airplane fly when you came here. If any of do you use an atomizer ever?
No.
You know, that's an old-fashioned tool, but it's the same principle at work. It also works in our voices and should work more often than it does. And the simple truth is that when air is in motion, these two pieces of paper representing my vocal folds, when I blow between them, they will be drawn toward the center line. And if you didn't know that principle, you'd think that if you blew between two pieces of paper, it would blow them apart. But the reality is just the opposite, as you'll watch me demonstrate. The papers are apart, I blow, and they're drawn together. You can see the motion of the air. If I increase the velocity of the air, they're drawn together with greater vigor. And if I increase the velocity yet again, they will start to vibrate. So there is a threshold of aerodynamic energy that will cause your vocal folds to start vibrating fairly passively. You already found it, but you can, when we were doing this exercise just now, but you can find it readily with a little bit more conscious awareness in just a moment. Just in the same way that your vocal folds sit apart when you inhale, when you go to sing, there are muscles in your larynx that bring the vocal folds to close approximation. Then as the airstream comes through, the vocal folds will begin to vibrate. You can all demonstrate this by closing your lips. Now open your lips so that they're just short of touching. They're nearly touching, but not quite. Okay? Now blow through them and see what happens. If you start with them apart and put the air through, then you have to ask yourself the question, why did they start to vibrate? And the answer is that as you hit the right velocity of air, the lips were drawn to closure. As soon as they were closed, then air began to back up behind the lips just a little bit until there was enough pressure to blow them open. As soon as they were blown open, that suction started all over again. And that's the vibration of your lips is exactly the same pattern as your vocal folds. The difference being that your lips are thick and they're big, and your vocal folds are small and thin, and so it doesn't take as much breath. Here I'm going to demonstrate the way where you can find that point where efficiency arrives, that point of energy threshold. If I start off sighing, and gradually increase the speed of my air through that opening, you'll hear the sound become increasingly less breathy and more efficient until it becomes not just efficient, but it becomes rich and with a lot of sonority. Listen. And I didn't change the shape of my vocal folds. I've had to practice that for a while to get it to happen. You can experiment with that yourselves. Imagine that you have a pinwheel on the tip of your index finger and hold it about 2 inches in front of your mouth. Blow on that pinwheel to make it move slowly. Watch what your breath does to make it move, to blow. Now make it move faster. Watch what your breath does to intensify your breath. Now blow on it to make it move really fast. Watch the process that your body used to increase your breath stream. If it went like an accordion or like a bellows, squeezing inwards, then you've got some work to do, because it should stay in that suspended place. But it should be now through that sighing place. Join me on this pitch. Okay, now it was really interesting. About 2/3 of you, when you made that sound, went, and there was a pop right at the beginning. You know what that says? that says that by nature, accustomed, your vocal folds are too tense. You need to learn how to relax them, and I've got an exercise for you in just a minute. Well, that'll help too. Yeah, that'll get you nice and relaxed. Yeah, a jug of wine or a glass of scotch or something like that. I don't know anything about that. This poor Mormon boy doesn't know what you're talking about. Thanks. It does, doesn't it? It doesn't have anything to do with singing. It makes you think you're singing better all the time, I presume. Okay. Yeah, that's why they put karaoke bars in bars, don't they? Because after you get a couple of belts, anybody will try anything, I'll know, almost. Okay, so you're going to start off whispering on pitch. If you whisper, you just do this. You know, a long time ago, I just remembered an anecdote. When I was just a young guy in college, I was performing in Salt Lake City, going to school south of there in Provo. And I got hired to sing in a show, a tourist show attraction. But I needed a job. And so they gave me a job being a janitor in the Mormon Tabernacle. Have any of you been through there and seen that thing? Well, it was my job back then to say, I will now whisper. I will now drop 3 pins. And people 180 feet away could hear me whisper and could hear the pin drop, and just demonstrating the acoustics. So I've had experience as a professional whisperer. I can tell you don't make a good living doing it. Yeah. Okay, but you're going to whisper on pitch. So like this. It's the kind of sound that has a little bit of voice in it, but it's mostly like a whisper. On this pitch, can you try it? Whisper. Now the characteristics that go along with that are that you can feel air leaking out through your throat, can't you? And there's a real relaxed feeling in your throat. No intensity at all. Now let's do it again. Just whisper on that bit. Good. Okay. Now in that position, keep your vocal folds in that relaxed place. Now put the pinwheel in front of your hand. We're going to combine those two things. Now whisper and make the pinwheel move slowly. Now make the pinwheel move faster. You hear what happens? The tone's now getting clearer. There's still a little breathiness in it, but it's gotten clearer just by the movement of the air. Now we're going to make the pinwheel move faster. Some of you, unfortunately, knew the game is to get a clear tone, and some of you tighten up your vocal folds according to old habits, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, you got a clear, bright, but tight sound. And what you're looking for is not tight. This is particularly very important for lady callers. But it can be important for men callers as well, because that tightness communicates irritation, irritability, disapproval. And that's the last message you want to give to your callers. Mostly what you want to give them is, you're doing great. Just come on back into a square. You everybody know what a square looks like? You know, they could be wandering all over the floor, but you still want to give them that sense of reassurance, and that comes from that release in your throat. So here you go again, making the pinwheel move real fast now. And you'll notice two things. The first place as you play this game to yourself, you'll hit a point where it's no longer breathy, and it will become clear. That's the first threshold place. But if you go one more speed in the frequency of the breath, the tone will cease to be clear and it will become enriched. You can hear it in my singing. There's clarity. That's one level of that energy threshold. But I'm going to go one more energy farther. And all of a sudden it becomes rich and harmonic and attractive. And I didn't do anything except find that balance in my singing. Having found that, do it one more time. Find it. Okay, each one of you take a moment. Each one of you take a moment and answer for yourselves, what does that feel like? Today, your definition of what it feels like will be very rudimentary. But as you keep asking yourself that question, your observation, your powers of observation will increase, and you'll begin to discern things about the way that your body works when it's in harmony with itself. And you're going to want to encourage that of yourselves in your own singing. So here we go. With this time we're going to sing My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, but you've all felt that point of threshold energy, and I want every note to be on it. Here's our starting pitch. Go. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. Inhale. My Bonnie lies over the sea. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. Oh, bring back my Bonnie to me. One by one, you don't all have to respond. I'd like to have your reactions to that sound. What did you hear when we were singing together as a group? Anybody's reaction? The tone is clear. What's another reaction? Full and rich, but not forced, right? Good. Anything else? Deeper. That's part of this richness, because you get this fundamental frequency and then the harmonics around it start to happen. And the reason those harmonics happen is because you have happy, relaxed vocal folds. Floppy vocal folds make for rich sounds. Stiff vocal folds make for strident sounds. Okay? Anything else?
What do we do if we're nervous?
You just go back to this little place and you go, no, I'm kidding. It's when you get nervous, that stiffens the muscles up, doesn't it? And so obviously the right answer is that you find lots of moments when you're not nervous to repeat this behavior, and over a period of time it will gradually start becoming second nature to you, and you will find that your voice is less and less tense. It won't happen tonight, it won't happen next week probably, but it could happen within the next 3 weeks or month, depending on how persistent you are in doing this kind of activity. And it will be a gradual evolution from one point to the other point. Any other observations about the sounds that were made? I'll make one. There was a lot of noise. There was a lot more volume. And that's another really wonderful byproduct, is that there's a great deal of presence in this flowing kind of phonation. So the basic skill is learning how to find this flowing breath, this threshold kind of singing. And there are two activities that are a part of it. One of them is finding the rhythm of your breathing and making your breathing work efficiently. Now, we've been here working for nearly an hour. Don't you feel kind of relaxed and easy in your bodies right now? You've been standing up for an hour, but here in the middle of my body, I feel exercised, but I feel at ease and comfortable. The place where we have the less control is over our vocal folds. Our vocal folds have a tendency to be tight. They're the vibrators, sure enough, but they have a much bigger job, and that is as a sphincter valve, to close tightly. And when it closes tightly, when we swallow, those vocal folds close tightly so that food won't get down into our lungs while we're trying to put the food down in our stomachs. When you lift a heavy object, you can feel the vocal folds close, clamped tight. So they also are very accustomed to working as a sphincter, and that means really tight closure. Not in singing. You don't want that behavior in singing. So you've got to coax your vocal folds into passive vibration. Here's a really good way to do this. I'd like to have you form your lips around as if you had a little straw in your mouth. I happen to bring my own straw. Something about like this. And you just go, when you do that, you set up an environment inside your body that's really conducive to passive vocal fold vibration. Because usually your vocal folds feel responsible for controlling the exit of the air, so they stiffen whenever you start to run out of breath. You've shifted the pressure, the responsibility for the exit of the air, out to your lips by making a small opening in your lips. Your throat is about an inch and an eighth wide, and the opening that you're creating at the lips is only maybe an eighth of an inch or a quarter of an inch wide. Obviously, there's going to be some positive pressure. You'll feel it blow. You'll feel pressure in your cheeks to make your cheeks balloon outwards. You'll feel that pressure go all the way down to the bottom of your trachea, down into your chest. Try it. When that happens, the vocal folds are no longer responsible for controlling the exit of the air, and so they're free to flap and go where they want to. So, with your lips in this puckered position, I want you to sing My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean again, of course, without words. That's enough repetitions. Did you notice that in that position it was easier to go to the high note? It took less pressure to do that. And the reason that it took less pressure is because your vocal folds weren't as tight. There's another really positive byproduct of this little puckered position, and that is if you put your hand in front of your mouth about 2 or 3 inches in front, you can feel the stream of air. And why do you care? Because when you start going high, if you feel the stream of air no longer on your hand, that means your vocal folds have inadvertently stiffened up and not let the air through. So you can monitor whether the air is flowing or not. Try it. Did you feel a relative constancy of airflow through your hand? And it feels really relaxed. It's like somebody's massaged the inside of your throat. That's a very positive experience. And that can happen when your pitch elevates. We're going to go higher now into a range that some of you men may feel uncomfortable about. Just get over it. And just keep the air flowing along. Go. I'm suspecting that was a little bit of a surprise to some of you, that the ease with which you went up to the high notes was so easy. We're not done yet. Now remember, you just keep that. You almost need to be a little Buddha with 9 arms, one hand doing this and the other hand doing this.
I have a question.
Yes.
And that's when we're doing this exercise. Are we supposed to take our air in through our mouth or through our nose? Because when I try to do it through my nose, then my mouth somehow, I don't get enough. So just through the mouth?
Some voice teachers teach the best way to get a deep breath is through the nose.
Can you explain what that is?
The reason why it is easier to take breath in through the nose, look at a baby. Babies do not breathe through their mouths. The mouth is not a primary breathing orifice. The nose is a primary breathing orifice. So when you breathe through the nose, it goes through the turbinates that are inside the skull, down, and it curves straight down in. Whereas breathing in through the mouth, it hits the back of your oropharyngeal airway and then has to be directed somewhere. When you breathe in through your nose, it's a natural breath, whereas breathing through the mouth is not natural.
I appreciate that, Steve. That's really good information for you to keep in mind. Through the nose, it's a curve, but it's always in the same channel. Where you come in through the mouth, it changes angles sharply. However, for singers, the usual answer is that when you have to take a fast breath, you can't get as quick a breath through your nose as you can through your mouth. So most people who are trained singers will do both. Okay, I've got one more task that I need to show you to help you on down the road. But right now, we're going to sing higher. Starting right there, still blowing through the little puckered position. Go. Now Now, time out. Raise your hand if the stream of air on your fingers diminished when you went to the high note. That's just a pattern that your vocal folds have, an old pattern where they stiffen up. So you have to start with a different assumption, and that is my game is not to hit the high note. My game is to keep the air stream constant while I hit the high note. And you'll find over several repetitions that your vocal folds will gradually learn how to let go. And it's the letting go process that's essential. Go. This is absolutely too simple. You're doing really, really well. So I'm going to cheat and put you to there. Go. Let it just flow through. Just a moment. Let me point out, from the first pitch that I started you to the pitch where we ended the high note, that's more than an octave and a half. That gives you access to at least 80, maybe 90% of all square dance caller records, the lows and the highs. But you have to figure out how to do this and transfer it over into your regular singing.
Should we have had less breath coming out on the high notes?
No, it should be the same. And in your case, I pointed at you because I could tell by your body posture that it was less. There was some stiffening going on.
I see the same, but at the beginning of each note, there seemed to be like a little puff.
Yeah. And actually, if you're doing this where you start your breath right at the top of that cycle, where you start singing right at the top of that cycle, there should be no wasted little puff of air to begin. It'll just start in coordination. Okay, here's the last thing. Let's see, I got about 3 last things, but I'm going to confine myself to one last thing. I have to remember which one it was. My mind stays active while I'm in the process. It's really simple, and that is you start this pattern. Rise over, one he lies over the sea. You see what I'm doing? I'm starting with the pattern, and I'm just coaxing myself from that pattern into actual sounds. On again, off again. Starting with the successful execution with plenty of air flowing, opening my mouth and being perpetually surprised by what it feels like, because it feels differently than when it's stiff in your throat, until you can actually sing a whole phrase, a whole verse, a whole song in that pattern. But you start with this little controlled to keep the positive pressure in your whole vocal tract, to make your vocal folds increasingly passive, and then when they're passive, they are more floppy, they get richer quality when they open, you work less hard, and the results are more satisfying, both to yourself and to everybody else. It's time for me to stop, but I'd be happy to entertain any questions that any of you might have having to do with this session. So the piece of paper that you got from me, we talked through. There are some additional exercises you can do there. Postural alignment, getting your breath, getting the breath cycle, finding passivity in your vocal folds, finding that threshold of energy, and then becoming accustomed to it. Those are the sequences of activities that I would invite you to do. Are there questions that anybody would like to ask? If not, then I thank you. And